Have you ever noticed how hard it is to say no, even when you're exhausted? You agree to do things you don't have time for, you apologise when something wasn't even your fault, and after the smallest disagreement, your mind keeps replaying it. Did I upset them? Are they annoyed at me? Should I fix it? And somewhere inside, there's this quiet question. Why is it so hard to just have boundaries? If this feels familiar, there's a strong chance that this pattern didn't begin in your adulthood. For many people, people pleasing started as a survival strategy in childhood. It's not weakness, it's not manipulation, it's a nervous system response. And today we're going to explore how that happens and why your nervous system may still be pleasing people and believing that that's the safest option, even when it's exhausting. And near the end, I'll share one small shift that often helps people begin changing this pattern without forcing themselves to suddenly be assertive. How are you doing today? I'm Jill. I've been a psychotherapist for over 25 years, and on this channel, we talk about why we think, feel, and behave the way we do, especially how experiences like childhood trauma or emotional neglect can shape our relationships later in life. And sometimes they can lead us to give far more leeway than is healthy to people such as those with narcissistic traits. If you're returning, thank you so much for coming back. It means a lot to have you here again. And if this is your first time, hi, welcome. I'm really glad you found this space. If this video resonates with you, liking, subscribing helps the channel and lets the algorithm know this video is worth sharing. And I'd really appreciate it. People who struggle with people pleasing are often some of the most emotionally intelligent people in any room. They notice when someone feels uncomfortable. They pick up subtle changes in tone or body language that others miss. They're often the ones inviting the quieter person into a conversation or gently smoothing tension over in a group. They care about harmony. They genuinely want people to feel included and understood, which is why people often enjoy having them around. But there is a hidden cost, because when your attention is always focused on how everyone else feels, it becomes very easy to lose track of one simple question. How do I feel right now? For people pleasers, safety depends on other people's moods. Many people pleasers grew up in environments where emotional safety felt unpredictable. Maybe a parent's mood could change just like that. One moment things being calm, the next things being really tense. So the child learns to scan the emotional temperature of the room. They notice small signals, a sigh, a look, a shift in tone, because if they can sense what's coming, maybe they can prevent it. So they become helpful and agreeable and easy to manage. Over time, the nervous system learns something really powerful. Keeping other people happy helps keep me safe. And that pattern often follows them through into adulthood. Without realizing it, they start feeling responsible for the emotional atmosphere around them. Here's the paradox. What started as a survival skill often gets mistaken later as a personality trait. You see, for people pleasers, love feels conditional. Another piece of the puzzle is how love was experienced when we were growing up. Some children learned quietly but deeply that connection must be earned. They receive warmth when they behave well, when they succeed, when they help. But when they express anger or disappointment or their own needs, that warmth disappears. Maybe there's criticism or distance or emotional withdrawal, or that passive aggressive mode with the person saying they're fine while banging kitchen cupboards demonstrating they're not fine. So that the child absorbs a powerful belief. Love stays when I'm easy to be with. You might recognize this in small everyday moments. Someone asks you what you'd like to eat, and you hear yourself saying, I'm happy with whatever everyone else wants. And even though you actually might have a preference. And here's the thing, it happens so quickly, you barely notice that you did it. And what many people don't realize is that this pattern can shape almost every relationship we have as adults. It definitely shaped who I used to be in relationships way back in my past. There's actually one childhood experience that creates people pleasing more than almost everything else, and I'll come to that in just a moment. For people pleasers, conflict feels dangerous. In some homes, conflict wasn't just uncomfortable, it could have been explosive. Arguments might involve shouting or humiliation or the silent treatment, or they might go on for days. For a child, those moments are overwhelmingly scary. So the nervous system adapts, it learns something quickly. Avoid conflict at all costs. Years later, even small disagreements might trigger anxiety. You might notice yourself apologising quickly, agreeing when you're unsure, or smoothing things over just to restore the peace. Not because you lack options, but because somewhere in your body, conflict still feels really dangerous. And this often leads to something many people pleasers develop without even realising it, a kind of emotional radar for other people. Children growing up in unpredictable environments often develop this emotional radar, which is a remarkable awareness and attunement with others. They become extremely intuitive about other people. They notice small signals that others overlook, a pause in someone's voice, a shift in a facial expression. The brain becomes trained to ask, is everything okay? Did I cause that? Do they need something from me? And in psychology and psychotherapy, we describe this as hyper-attunement. And hyper-attunement is when your nervous system became extremely skilled at reading other people in order to stay safe. And while this skill can make someone incredibly empathic, it can also make it very difficult to fully relax in relationships. You might recognize small behaviors here, the quick nod when someone suggests something, presenting your opinion as a question, or smiling politely during a conversation when you actually disagree. These are very common patterns when agreement once meant safety. We require an emotional reset. And if you're recognizing yourself in several of these patterns right now, I just want to pause for a moment and say something important. You're not broken, you're not weird, you're not wonky. Many thoughtful, empathic, responsible people develop these patterns. In fact, these traits often grow out of a nervous system that learned very early how to protect itself. And as you're listening to this, you might also be thinking about someone in your life who does this too. Someone who's always helping, adjusting, making sure everyone else is comfortable, is okay. Sometimes people pleasing isn't obvious from the outside. It could just look like someone being endlessly kind. So this is where we come to boundaries and over-accommodating. It can show up clearly around boundaries. People pleasers often find it difficult to say no. So they accept interruptions, they take on extra work, they adjust their priorities. At work, this might mean staying late even when you're exhausted. In friendships, it might mean always being the one who adapts, who compromises. From the outside, it can look generous, but internally, it can feel so draining because your time and energy are constantly moving towards everyone else's needs. Here's an everyday example. Imagine the situation where your manager asks if you can stay late to help finish something. You're already tired. You might already have plans. But before you even think about it, the word yes comes out. Later on the way home, you might notice something interesting. That part of you feels resentful. Another part of you feels guilty for even thinking that. And another part wonders, did I seem reluctant when I was asked to stay late to do that extra thing? The internal tug of war is incredibly common when approval once meant safety. Do you know your nervous system remembers? That is why people pleasing can feel automatic. Your nervous system remembered what once worked. If being agreeable prevented anger, rejection, or emotional withdrawal when you were young, your body learned something powerful. People pleasing reduces threat. And nervous systems tend to repeat strategies that once kept us safe, even decades later, even in completely different environments. So if you recognize yourself in these patterns, it's important to understand something. People pleasing usually isn't who you are. It's something your nervous system learned. Often it's the residual of a nervous system that had become incredibly perceptive, adaptive, and emotionally intelligent in order to survive early environments. These traits helped you navigate difficult situations. But, it's a big but, survival strategies aren't always meant to run forever. Change often begins much more gently than people expect. Sometimes it starts with something very small, simply pausing and asking yourself, what do I need right now? So when someone asks you for something, not forcing an answer, just notice inside, because the relationships that you have that are truly healthy don't require you to disappear or to betray your own self. In fact, they're often the ones that allow you to finally show up as yourself with your needs and with your preferences. And if this video helped you understand yourself a little better, there's a good chance someone else in your life might need to hear this too. I'd be really grateful if you would subscribe, like, and share to help this video get out to those who need it. Now, next week, I am going to be talking about daughters raised by narcissistic mothers and the psychology around it, but also what that actually looks like in the daughter's life when they're an adult. And I hope to see you then. And in the meantime, you take good care of yourself. Bye for now.